Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Today we are bringing you a preview for Disrupt from Triple Meeple Boardgames.
Triple Meeple Boardgames!
Triple Meeple Boardgames.
That's so fun to say really fast. Yeah, so...
This is a highly tight Euro, all about creating projects and progressing them through a design, develop, and marketing track in Silicon Valley. There's going to be asymmetric factions that each one is going to have a unique role in this game for asymmetric factions, although you could play it at 2 players and 3 players, and there's ways to do that in the rules. And you are going to try to come out with the most money at the end of it, because that is what Silicon Valley is all about.
It's all about the money. No matter what anyone says, it's always all about the money.
Let's start this video off right with some flavor text.
Of course, because this is Quackalope, that's what we do. Flavor text is in our blood, people.
Welcome to the world of Silicon Valley, where innovation and financial prowess collide. In this board game, players take on the roles of the starter-upper, BPO, the Business Process Outsourcer, Angel Investor, and Market Leader, each with unique skills and strategies. The goal? To amass wealth by taking on the tech industry's giants and coming out on top. As a starter-upper, you will need to come up with the innovative projects to challenge the market leaders, who will stop at nothing to maintain their dominance. Angel investors will be watching closely, weighing the risks of investing in your project and others. Meanwhile, the BPO will be looking for opportunities to capitalize on the needs of everyone involved. To succeed, you will need to buy and sell shares, improve your project's design, develop and marketing, hype your projects on social media, and bluff your way through strengths and weaknesses of your competitors. With each player's asymmetric abilities and powers, every game will be a unique challenge requiring quick thinking, strategic planning, and a bit of luck. So are you ready to take on the fast-paced, high stakes of Silicon Valley?
Absolutely. And in fact, we have taken on the high stakes, fast-paced facts of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And we came up with five and a half really great tips for playing this game. Things that we found that were very interesting about it, that we felt we had to tell you about.
Disrupt slightly different from other games that we have played in this genre.
Absolutely. The first one
is going to be those highly asymmetric factions. Yes. Every asymmetric faction is going to start with their own money, their own resources, their own deck of cards, and every deck of cards is going to allow that player to do different actions, different places on the board, and a different objective, and an entirely different way to play the game.
When she says an entirely different way to play the game, it is so far different from each one. It's not even funny. Like, for instance, the starter-upper is the one that's actually pushing these companies through the design phases, through the pipelines and whatnot, whereas the market leader has already done it, created these games over these companies over here, and is trying to do everything they can to stop that from happening, so that their companies still remain at the top of the game.
Yep.
And you've got your angel investor who could care less about the rest of it, just wants to make sure that they're putting money in when it matters and getting money out when it doesn't.
Same with the BPO.
That's right.
They kind of mitigate and influence the market and the projects in a little bit more of a hands-off way, whereas the market leader and the starter-upper are really going head-to-head on these starting projects.
Absolutely. And, with the BPO, they also have special things that they can do to kind of throw wrenches in the plans and try to say, hey, look, I'll help you out a little bit if you help me out a little bit. There's a lot more of that, like, tit-for-tat in the BPO, I think, than any of the rest of them. But they definitely played completely differently than each other, which I thought was a very unique thing. Yeah. And you definitely wanted to play them the correct way so that you get the most out of the game when you play them that way.
The second thing that makes this game unique is this cascading worker placement locations. The first player who is going to go to the location is going to take the top action on the track, the second action on the track, the third action on the track, and then slot in at the bottom. The bottom one is usually a very selective and highly coveted location that most players want to go to, such as first player token, or getting a resource from this track, or getting secret information. The next player that goes to that column is only going to be able to take the top 3 actions and slot down there. The third player, and so on and so forth. So these columns, they get less and less interesting, and you want to go to other columns in the middle of the game because you don't want to have just less powerful actions. You want the most powerful actions.
Yep, and there are definitely certain columns that are better for the beginning of the game, and certain ones that are better for the end of the game. There's only 2 spaces, for instance, where you can pull cards from. There's only 2 spaces where you can play cards onto the board from.
But this is the main, important...
It's the meat.
This is the meat of the game. It is a Euro game with worker placements. And so everything else you do on all the other areas of the board are going to happen because you've taken these actions in these worker placement slots.
Yep. Now, we do have a 0.5 here that we have to say, I think it slots in really well here. I think it slots in really well here. These are our honorable mentions.
We like the puns.
The puns are fantastic.
Like Dice Coin, Card Flicks, Meeple Book, Board Tube, Eternium, Miniature Prime.
I mean, come on now.
I love those puns.
That's fantastic.
And the other part is I like the components. I like the screen printed meeples and the resources as well. Additionally, there's the way that you keep track of your money in the game is through this credit card with these turning dials. And then it can go up and it can go down in the middle of the game as you're buying and selling shares. And I like it because it has a very Silicon Valley feel.
It does.
The credit card looks like a legitimate credit card. It has the chip. It has the tapping. And in Silicon Valley, no one's walking around with cash or coins.
Not a person. No way. No self-respecting Silicon Valleyan would have anything, coins or paper, messing up their pockets. Come on now.
The third thing that makes this game so unique is the event deck.
It's definitely the event deck.
Talk about the event deck, because you were manning it during our game.
I actually really enjoyed the event deck. In fact, I loved it so much that I wanted to do it early, and Shira kept telling me, hey, don't forget, we've got to do these things first. And I'm like, I don't care about that. I want to do this. It's so much more fun.
The game is played over 6 rounds, and every round consists of 3 different phases. There's the operation phase, where you put out your workers. Then there's the project phase, where you're going to be advancing these projects along their pipeline and triggering the workflow, the column that they're in, and all of the effects of that column. And then West's favorite part is the event phase, where you get to lay down an event card.
Nobody listened to anything you said about the rest of it. What they're waiting for is for me to explain the event cards. That's exactly what's happening right now. Now, what's interesting about the event cards is, unlike traditional cards, there's not just one thing happening. There's usually multiple things that are going to happen on these particular cards. For instance, like this one here says you're putting a market cube on both Meeple Book and Board Tube. So you're actually adding value to a startup and a regular company that's already going. So it's a great way to increase the value of those particular stocks, which makes them more interesting here on the board, so you want to purchase them more often. In addition to that, this one here says you can buy Meeple Book at its lowest price. What that means is that the people who are living in Silicon Valley have decided they're actually going to buy that stock right now, and they're going to buy the lowest priced one and go ahead and put it in their stock for us to be able to buy it at potentially a higher cost. But then it also says it's going to buy the shares. So buy all the shares at 4, buy all the shares, or buy one share at 5, buy another share at 6, and another share at 7. Some of these actually say they're going to buy certain ones at double the cost. So you can actually make a ton of money by pushing things through the stock market, which really does feel like Silicon Valley. Because
there's been times where you didn't have any stocks in here, and the crowd was trying to buy, and some people made bank, and some people were just like, I wish I had sold some of my shares before the event phase.
It really made you want to go into some of these other locations so that you could start putting stuff down instead of just buying it all for yourself, which I thought really pushed the rest of the game quite well and made it really interesting, and each event at the end of the round felt really good, and it really did push the game forward.
Some of the events also had some lasting effects for the next round as well, whereas you got double resources or got to draw up double cards when you were taking a draw card slot.
Absolutely.
The fourth one
is triggering the action columns.
Yeah.
And I really felt like that was really fun because as you're playing
cards...
you
wanted to skip it every single turn?
I did want to skip it every single turn because there was only one that I was really in, but it really was a fun one until you messed it up and put extra cards in there and then made it actually better for you.
So the starter upper is going to be, every round, a new one of their companies is going to be coming out and advancing along the pipeline. And in the project phase, you're going to be triggering the entire column of cards. So as more cards get added to this grid over here, those triggering of the column, the triggering of the workflow is going to become more powerful. And they're going to be able to get design cubes and marketing cubes and innovation cubes. And it's going to change the value and the legitimacy of that project as it travels through.
Or... if you're on my side and you were trying to make those new amazing companies that are coming through look poor, you could actually penalize everyone who owns stock by charging them $1 million as an overflow thing. You could actually stop cubes from coming onto those particular companies because it was something that you didn't want to see happen.
There's an opportunity for a lot of player interaction here as well, because cards that get played here don't get removed, and you'll be able to tell who played the card based on the icon. The icon will match that player. And when it comes to triggering the cards in the workflow, that player has an opportunity to yes, trigger the card or no trigger the card. And other players have the opportunity to say, hey, I'll give you stocks or I'll give you X amount of money if you don't add that cube, or if you add that cube. And so there's that player interaction of messing with the market and the behind the scenes talk, the table talk.
Yeah, a little bit of bidding, a little bit of negotiation. Every game's better with bidding and negotiation, right?
It's better with bidding and negotiation.
Absolutely. And that was definitely part of it. It was a lot more entertaining once we got more cards out onto the board, and I really started to enjoy that quite a bit. And the last one, our fifth thing that we felt really, really good about, was the worker placement card slots. That's something we hadn't seen before in many other games, is that the angel investor and the BPO had these cards that allowed them to create extra slots on the board and do really unique things. And you could put 2 of them out at a time. They got taken away once they were used.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
And some of them will allow like a split of resources. Some of them will allow you to take specific actions on the board. And just having another available slot on the board that was different from the ones that were already there and programmed really changed that round. And they cost some resources, like the BPO and the angel investor have to pay the resources to put the card out. They get the reward of the money there. And then some of them will get the reward if, let's say, they had to pay some of the resources to the person going to that slot, if they had to pay resources to use that location, it would go to the owner of that card. Exactly. So it was advantageous both when they play the card out and when that card gets used.
Yep. And some that the BPO had were actually these split systems where the reward was set up so that there would be certain resources on the card and then a valuation of a particular amount of money. And then the person who went to that particular card and put their meeple there got to choose one side or the other. And then whatever side they didn't choose went back to the BPO, which I thought was a really unique mechanic and a way for the BPO to get even more resources when it was all said and done. So I think that's a really interesting, very unique type of mechanism that I hadn't seen implemented in a true Euro like that.
Placement.
Yeah. It was very different.
It speaks to like the asymmetry of the player decks and how only 2 players actually have those cards that can get played out. And it's not the market leader, and it's not...
definitely not the other one. Yeah, not the starter-upper.
It's not the starter-upper.
And even though, I mean, they still both had them, they were still both very different as well. So, because only the BPO had the split action cards, and the angel investors ones were very specific for doing
playing
specific
cards
things
and doing
on the
actions
board.
on the board. Yeah.
It was very, very unique, very different in those asymmetric ways.
One more thing I wanted to point out is that endgame is very, very meaningful and impactful, and it's almost worthwhile to see how an endgame scoring takes place before you actually play the game. It will really influence your strategy and the tactics and what you're trying to achieve throughout the game if you know what to prepare for. If you know that some companies are going to dissolve and not going to exist at the end of the game, and so having shares in those companies is not going to be worthwhile. Some companies are going to be extremely profitable, and having all 5 shares can bankroll you.
Yeah, a massive amount of money. And, Shira, I think that was probably the most fantastic segue I've ever heard, because, hey, you can actually watch the end of a gameplay, because we will have such a gameplay up here on the channel, so you'll be able to watch an entire playthrough. You'll get to see the asymmetric factions in action, and you'll be able to see that end game, because I completely agree with you. That very last round was massively important for how to actually get through the game and understand, so that the next time you're playing, you'll be able to understand how to play everything correctly. Also, we're going to be doing a faction guide on how to do each individual faction, play them correctly, and that way you'll have an understanding of the ways that you're supposed to play those factions to get the most out of them and have the best experience when playing the game.
Yeah.
And that should be on Quack & Co., right?
Yes, it should be on Quack & Co.
So that will be on Quack & Co. So
stay tuned for a Quack & Co. video on the factions and a main channel gameplay coming on.
Absolutely.
And then make sure to go check out the Kickstarter page. Act responsibly, give it a look, and... tell them the Quack sent you.
Absolutely. The Lopes, right?
Yeah.
Because we're sans the Quack right now, so the Lopes. Yeah. The Quacks and the Lopes. We did it.
In any case. Whatever you do.
Don't forget to do the important thing.
Get out and play some games.
Get out and play some games.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.